Hi everyone, my name is Adenike. In this tutorial today, I'm going to show you how to cut and sew this beautiful dress showing on the screen, which is of two parts. The upper part, which is the overlap part, and the down part, which is the skirt part. I'm going to draft my upper part on the paper, and after that I'm going to draft my skirt part on the fabric directly. So I'm going to use this paper for the upper part of the front part. To get that overlap cut out, I'm going to measure from the center here. I'm going to measure 7 inches and connect. This 7 inches is for the wrap, remember that. So, and this place is going to be my shoulder line. So from this line now is where I'm going to start all the measurement for the front part. Now on my shoulder line here, from my center front, I'm going to input half of my shoulder measurement, which is here. I'm trying to tape it down to avoid it from shaking. From this point, I'm going to come down by 1 inch for my shoulder slope. And from this point again, I'm going to input half of my round armhole, which is here. So what I have here all together, I'm going to mark it out as well. And what I have on my shoulder line here, I'm going to put it here, just to make my measurement accurate. So I'm going to connect my armhole line and connect my chest line. This is my armhole line, and this is my chest line. Having done that, I'm going to measure out my neck width of 4 inches from my center front and connect it to my shoulder slope like so. And after that, on my center front here from my shoulder line, I'm going to measure 7 inches for my neck depth. Now to draw out my armhole line for the front part, I'm going to find the midpoint of these 2 points, which is here. And from this point, I'm going to measure 0.75, which is 3/4 of an inch inward like so, and connect it from my shoulder slope to meet this point slantly like this. Now to finish it up, I'm going to input 1/4 of my bust on my chest line, which is here. And I'm going to use the cuff side of my ruler to finish it up like so. Having done that, from my shoulder line here, I'm going to measure out my waistline. From my shoulder as well, I'm going to measure out my bust point, which is here. And I'm going to extend the 2 points. This is my bust point line, and this is my waistline. Having done that, I'm going to input my nipple to nipple measurement for me to draw out my dart. So on my bust point line, I'm going to input half of my nipple to nipple measurement there. My nipple to nipple measurement is 8 inches. If I divide it by 2, it will give me 4 inches. I'm going to use ½ inch for this side, and I'm going to use ½ inch for this side if I'm stitching it. But half inch for this side, I'm going to add it to it. It will now give me 4.5 inches. That is what I'm marking out on my bust point line and on my waistline. And I will now connect it. So after connecting, I'm going to measure 1 inch from my bust point line like so. This is where my dart is going to start from. On my waistline, I'm going to measure ½ inch on both sides. And I'm going to connect like so. You know, on my chest line, I've already imputed 1/4 of my bust plus ½ inch is. So on my waistline, I'm going to impute 1/4 of my waist circumference there plus 1 inch dart. Now, I will now connect from my chest line to my waistline like so. Having done that, I'm going to connect my neck width to my neck depth like so. And to avoid any folding of fabric on the side, I'm going to measure ½ inch from my waistline upward like this and connect it to the dart leg. You can make it 1 inch if you want. Now I will go ahead and extend this waistline to meet the 7 inches for my overlap. So from these down parts now, I'm going to come up by ½ inch. I'm going to connect from my neck depth to meet up with that ½ inch. Now I'm done with the front part. I'll go ahead and cut it out. And now that I'm done cutting the front, I'll go ahead and hide my dart, just because I'm not adding lining to my lace fabric. So I'll just fold it like so and use my masking tape to hold it down. After doing so, I'm going to move on to the back part. Here is another paper for my back part, as you can see. What I'm going to be doing now is to mark out 1 inch for my zipper allowance from the upper part of my paper till the down part and connect. So this line now is where I'm going to start all the measurements for the back part. So from this line on my shoulder line, I'm going to mark out half of my shoulder measurement. And from this point, I'm going to come down by 1 inch for my shoulder slope. And from this 1 inch from my shoulder slope, I'm going to impute half of my round armhole. What I have here altogether, I'm going to repeat it here on this zipper allowance line. So what I have on the shoulder, I'm going to repeat it here as well. And I'm going to connect from here to here for my armhole line for the back part, and this is my chest line. Now for me to draw out my armhole curve for the back part, I'm going to find the midpoint of these 2 points, which is here. And on my chest line, I'm going to impute quarter of my bust there with ½ inch ease, which is here. So I'll now connect with the cuff side of my ruler from here to here. So now this is my armhole curve for the back part. I haven't done that. On my shoulder line here from my center back, I'm going to impute 4 inches for my neck width and connect it to my shoulder slope like so. And as for my neck depth, I'm going to measure 1.5 inch and connect it from here to here like so. Having done that, I'm going to measure out my waistline from my shoulder line and rule it out. To draw out my dart on the back part, I'm going to measure out half of my nipple to nipple measurement plus ½ inch seam allowance on my chest line and on my waistline, and I'm going to connect it like I did on the front part. Having done that, I'm going to come down by 1 inch on this line. This is where my back dart is going to start from. And on my waistline, I'm going to come in by ½ inch on both sides and connect it. So I'll go ahead and impute quarter of my bust on my chest line, which I've already did. On my waistline, I'm going to do the same thing, quarter of my waistline plus 1 inch dart. This here. I'm going to connect the 2 points together like so. Now I'll go ahead and measure 0.5 upward from the waistline here and connect it to the dart leg, just to avoid folding of fabric on the side. And to avoid folding of fabric on the center back too, I'm going to measure in 0.5 like so and connect it to meet up with the neckline. Just watch as I'm connecting it. Now ½ inch that I'm cutting out from here, I'm going to replace it back on the side to avoid any short of fabric at the end of the day and reconnect the side. So I'll go ahead and reconnect it like so. After reconnecting, I'm going to cut it out. Now I'm going to hide my dart like I did on the front part. I'm going to fold it like this. After folding, I'm using masking tape to hold it down like so. This is my back part. I'm needing 2 pieces of it, and this is my front part. I'm going to need 2 pieces of it as well. So I'll now move on to the down part. I said I'm going to cut my down part directly on the fabric. Now this is my lace fabric, as you can see. This is my front part folded into 2, and this is my back part folded into 2. I have 2 inches here for my zipper allowance and slit allowance because I'm going to have little slit at the bottom of my skirt. So this folded edge for the front part is going to be on the zipper allowance line. And to know the amount of length for the down part, I'm going to deduct the upper part length from the full length of my dress. My upper part length is 19 inches. So that 19 inches, which is the length of my upper part, I'm going to place it here on the bottom of my skirt here. Just make sure you leave half-inch seam allowance here before you place that 19 inches. So I'm going to measure the full length now. The full length of my dress is 63 inches, which is here, and I'm going to roll it out. This place now will serve as my waistline. You know, I measured it from the bottom of my skirt. Since the skirt I'm making, I'm not going to hem the bottom because of the beautiful edges of this lace. Now this is my center front and this is my center back. From my center front on the waistline, I'm going to impute quarter of my waist plus 1 inch seam allowance, and there is no need for that allowance since I've already eyed the dart on the upper part. Now from my waistline, I'm going to measure my hip line, which is 8 inches plus half-inch waist joining, which is here. And on my hip line from my center front, I'm going to impute quarter of my hip plus 1 inch seam allowance, which is here. So here now, I'm going to place that 19 inches. I'm making sure I leave that half-inch for seam allowance on the waistline before placing that 19 inches. So I'm going to measure where my above the knee length is, which is 38 inches now. 38 inches. This is where my above the knee length is. You know, I said this skirt part is going to have a little bit A-line shape. The skirt I'm making for this dress is going to have a little bit A-line shape. So to get the amount of fabric folding for that, you have to divide your hip into 4 and add extra 3 inches to it. If it is normal A-line, you have to add 5 inches to 6 inches to it. But this particular one of slight A-line, I'm going to add extra 3 inches to it. I added extra 3 inches to it, let me say that. So on the front part, I have quarter of my hip plus extra 3 inches. After that, I added extra 1 inch for my seam allowance to it. What I have here on fold for the front part now is 13.5 inches, which is a quarter of my hip, plus 3 inches extra for that slight A-line shape that I'm talking about. That will make it 16.5 inches plus 1 inch seam allowance. I have here 17.5 inches for my front part folded into 2 on fold. So I only had 2 inches to hit to what I have on the front for my back because of this, because of the zipper allowance and the slit that I'm creating on the back part. That is just it. So on my hip line here, I've imputed quarter of my hip plus 1 inch seam allowance. On my waistline, I imputed quarter of my waist plus 1 inch seam allowance. And on this above the knee line that I measured out just now, I'm going to impute quarter of my hip minus 1 inch seam allowance. So what I have here altogether with seam allowance, I'll just deduct 1 inch from it. Now I have 13.5 inches here. I'll just deduct 1 inch from it. That will give me 12.5 inches. Just for me to create that A-line shape. So what I'm going to do now is to just connect from here to here to here and to meet up with the down parts. Hope you understand. If you have any question about that, you can just ask in the comment section. Now the down part here on the back part is where I need 2 inches for the slit. So from the upper part, I'm going to measure out 1 inch. Now I added 1 inch for seam for zipper allowance on the upper part of this dress. I'll just measure that 1 inch out from this waistline out till I reach above my knee length and cut it off. 1 inch. I'll just take that off. Now, to avoid any slip bulge on my, let me cut out my waist first. So this done with the waist. So on the back part here, on the waistline, I'll just measure ½ inch inward. And just measure ½ inch inward to avoid any slip bulge, any folding on the back. And I'm going to connect slightly to the down part like so and cut it off. And make sure you don't forget to replace it back on the waist here. Here's it, ½ inch. Reconnect and cut it out. That's it. We are done cutting it. Now remove the back. So this is the front part. I'll just cut out this ½ inch. If you can see what I'm doing, cutting out that ½ inch out. So now this is my front and this is my back part. My front is one piece while the back is 2 pieces. So we'll now move on to the upper part. Let me show you how to cut the front of the upper part of the fabric. This is my fabric. Here's my fabric now. Now I'm going to fold. This is the 2 edges of the lace. I'll just fold it like this. Let the right side face each other. It's a little bit tricky. That is why I want to show you how to cut it. Make sure the edges of this lace align properly, like so. So I'll go ahead and place my paper or pattern on it. This is my front part. As you can see, make sure this center align like so. Let it align like so. I'm going to pin it down. So now I'm going to add ½ inch on the shoulder line for my shoulder joining, ½ inch on this armhole curve, 1 inch on the side, ½ inch on the waistline, ½ inch seam allowance here as well. Make sure you measure if you are a beginner, please, to make your job accurate. So I'll go ahead and cut it out. As you can see, we are done with the front parts. So I'll place my back on it and cut it out off camera. It's just it. Now this is the back part, 2 pieces, and this is the front part, 2 pieces as well. So sorry guys, this is where I'm stopping for today because I don't want this video to be too long. By the grace of God, the sewing part is going to be in my next video. If my tutorial has been helpful to you guys, please give me a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel to support my channel. If you have any question pertaining to cutting and sewing, you can join me on my Facebook group, Details to Sewing, created by Akorede Adenike. I'm on Twitter and Instagram at Akorede Adenike. Please show some love by liking and following my page on Facebook at Aniki Culture. Till I see you in my next video guys, stay safe, stay blessed, bye.